Your sister's happiness is more important than your hobby, my mother declared after selling everything I owned. I should have screamed. I should have cried. Instead, a slow smile spread across my face. They thought they had won, but the game had just begun. My mother once told me that family is the soil from which we grow. What she failed to mention is that sometimes they're the ones who poison the earth just to see what survives. I learned this lesson the hard way on a crisp October afternoon, standing in the doorway of what was supposed to be my sanctuary. I had just returned from a 2-week botanical conference in Costa Rica, a trip that had secured a grant to expand my life's work. My mother greeted me at the door, not with a warm hug, but with a strange, defiant smile. "Your sister is finally getting the wedding she deserves," she said, her voice dripping with a satisfaction I couldn't place. It's amazing what a few flowers can pay for. The air in the house felt thin, wrong. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I pushed past her, heading straight for the climate-controlled conservatory I'd spent 15 years building. My name is Eliza, and for over a decade, my world revolved around that small, glass-walled room. It housed the Elysian collection, a breathtaking assembly of rare and endangered orchids, a living legacy left to me by my mentor. They weren't just plants, they were my promise to her, my art, the result of countless sleepless nights and every spare dollar I'd ever earned. It was a world my family saw as nothing more than an eccentric, expensive hobby. If you've ever poured your soul into something only to have the people closest to you completely miss the point, give this video a like so I know I'm not alone in this. They never understood that those delicate blooms held my past, my present, and what I thought was my future. That future began when I was 19, in a steamy greenhouse owned by a woman named Eleanor, who became the grandmother of my heart. While my own parents were pushing my sister, Brooke, towards pageants and sororities, Eleanor taught me the language of roots and blooms. She saw a quiet patience in me that my family mistook for a lack of ambition. "Some things, Eliza," she'd say, her hands gently tending to a cattleya orchid, "don't bloom by being forced. They bloom by being understood." She taught me that cultivating something beautiful was a form of rebellion in a world that often demands conformity. For 15 years, I lived by that philosophy. While my peers were buying new SUVs and taking trips to Napa, I was driving a 15-year-old Honda and pouring every spare cent from my landscape architecture job into my passion. I learned to graft, to cross-pollinate, to create hybrids the world had never seen. I built the conservatory myself, board by board, pane by pane, over 3 long summers. Last year, the collection won the Orchid Society's gold medal, a validation that brought tears to my eyes. It was proof that my quiet world had a voice. Eleanor passed away 5 years ago, leaving me her most precious mother plants to continue her work. It felt like being handed a sacred flame. I wonder, what time is it where you are right now, and are you, in this very moment, working towards a dream that feels invisible to the rest of the world? Let me know in the comments. For me, every dollar saved, every weekend spent adjusting humidity levels inside that glass sanctuary was a silent testament to my promise to her. It was my art, my science, and my soul, all under one roof. But to my family, that soul was just soil. My parents, Richard and Diane, never understood my quiet passion. To them, success was loud. It was my younger sister, Brooke. 4 years, my junior, Brooke was the sun around which our family planet orbited. She was effervescent, charming, and endlessly needy in a way that my parents found endearing. The disparity was a constant, quiet hum in the background of my life. When I was 16 and asked for a membership to the American Orchid Society for my birthday, I received a lecture on fiscal responsibility. When Brooke turned 16, she wanted to be an influencer, so they bought her a MacBook Pro and the newest iPhone to build her brand. While I worked 2 jobs to put myself through landscape architecture at a state university, they happily paid for Brooke's private liberal arts degree, which she switched 3 times before settling on communications. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but we were raised in 2 completely different households that just happened to share the same address. In one, you were expected to be a self-sufficient, resilient oak. In the other, you were a delicate, hothouse flower that required constant, expensive care. And in my parents' eyes, There was only ever room for one prize bloom in the family garden. I had made peace with that. I had built my own garden, my own world, one that didn't require their approval. I was wrong to think it was safe from them. That false sense of security was shattered by the opportunity of a lifetime. The invitation to be a keynote speaker at the World Botanical Conference in Costa Rica was a dream come true. It was a chance to present my research on hybridizing endangered species, to connect with peers who understood my work, and to secure a significant grant for future conservation efforts. But it meant being away for 2 weeks. For anyone else, this would be a simple matter of packing a suitcase. For me, it was a logistical nightmare. The Elysian collection wasn't a set of houseplants you could ask a neighbor to water. They require a precise daily misting schedule, humidity adjustments based on the weather, and temperature monitoring. Leaving them for 14 days is like leaving 14 fragile newborns. My usual caretaker, a retired botanist friend, had just undergone knee surgery. My boyfriend Liam was on an engineering assignment in Singapore. The only option left was my parents. Their house was only a 10-minute drive away. When I asked them, my father chuckled. "Eliza, we're your parents. We can handle watering some plants for you." The way he said it, with that familiar, slightly patronizing tone, sent a small shiver of unease down my spine. But I pushed it down. What choice did I have? I wrote down a meticulously detailed, page-by-page instruction manual, complete with photos and color-coded tabs. Trust is such a fragile thing, isn't it? Have you ever had that gut feeling, that tiny voice telling you not to hand something precious over, but you ignored it for the sake of keeping the peace? Tell me about it in the comments if you feel comfortable sharing. I chose to believe that this time they would see the importance of it. I chose to trust them, but that gut feeling? It's a powerful thing. And while I handed my parents the keys to the conservatory, I didn't hand them the keys to my entire world. You see, what my parents and almost everyone else didn't know is that the Elysian collection was split into 2 parts. In the main conservatory, the one attached to my house, I kept what I called my show collection. These were my beautiful, robust hybrids. They were the stunning results of my cross-pollination work, gorgeous to look at, impressive enough to win local garden shows, but ultimately replaceable. They were my public-facing work. But the real treasure, the heart of the collection, was the mother plants. These were the dozen or so rare, genetically pure species Eleanor had bequeathed to me, some of which are nearly extinct in the wild. They were kept in a smaller, separate, and far more secure annex in the back of the conservatory, a room my parents barely knew existed. The night before I flew to Costa Rica, my boyfriend Liam, the only other person who truly understood the stakes, helped me execute a plan we jokingly called Operation Pefiopedalum. We carefully moved every last one of the priceless mother plants into specialized, climate-controlled transport cases. He then drove them to a secure biotech storage facility he had access to through his engineering firm, a place with backup generators and biometric security. The detailed manual I left for my parents was for the show collection. The plants still needed care, of course. But what my parents were babysitting was the beautiful, dazzling decoy. I flew back from Costa Rica on a cloud of euphoria. The presentation had been a resounding success, the grant was secured, and I had made connections that would elevate my conservation work for years to come. I felt seen and respected in a way I never had in my own home. All I wanted was to get back to my quiet sanctuary, check on my plants, and maybe even call my parents to thank them, feeling a little guilty for my prior suspicions. I took a taxi from the airport directly to my house, wheeling my suitcase up the familiar stone path. My mother opened the door before I could find my keys, that strange, triumphant smile plastered on her face. And then she said the words I will never forget. "Your sister is finally getting the wedding she deserves." It's amazing what a few flowers can pay for. I just stared at her, confused. "What flowers, Mom? Did you sell some arrangements from the collection for me?" "I appreciate it, but we should have discussed." I trailed off as a cold, heavy feeling began to settle in my stomach. I pushed past her, my boots echoing on the hardwood floors as I made a straight line for the conservatory. The door was unlocked, and inside was nothing. It was a tomb. The benches were bare, wiped clean. The custom-built shelves stood empty. The automated misting system was silent, dripping uselessly onto the tile floor. It wasn't just a few plants missing. Everything was gone. Every last pot. Every single bloom. The entire show collection had vanished. My voice was a whisper. Where are they? Mom, where are my plants? She walked in behind me, her arms crossed, her expression utterly devoid of remorse. Don't be so dramatic, Eliza. They're in a better place. My father appeared in the doorway then, his face a mixture of guilt and misplaced resolve. Honey, try to understand, he began. Brooke's fiancé, Kevin, was laid off. They were going to have to cancel the wedding venue, the whole thing. She was heartbroken. I stared at him, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying speed. What does that have to do with my conservatory? My mother scoffed, as if I were a child asking a stupid question. Your sister needed help. A once-in-a-lifetime day was slipping through her fingers, and you had this room full of cash just sitting here. A collector from out of state was happy to take them off your hands. We got $20,000 for them. Enough to save her wedding and then some. $20,000. The show collection, while not my priceless originals, was still worth at least twice that to any respectable buyer. They hadn't just sold my work, they had practically given it away. You sold them. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. They're just flowers, Eliza, my mother said, waving a dismissive hand. You can always grow more. Family is what's important. Have you ever been blindsided by a betrayal so deep it literally took your breath away, coming from the one place you thought you were safe? If you have, just type the word heartbreak in the comments below. Sometimes, there are no other words. In that moment, watching them stand there, so sure of their righteousness, I felt a decade of suppressed anger begin to burn like ice in my veins. But the scream that was building in my chest never came out. Instead, something else did. A sound that started as a low chuckle and grew into a full, unrestrained laugh. It was a cold, sharp sound that echoed off the empty glass walls of the conservatory. My mother's face twisted in confusion and anger. What could possibly be funny right now, Eliza, your sister's happiness? I wiped a tear from my eye, not of sadness, but of something far more potent. I took a slow, deliberate breath, and the icy calm I'd felt moments before solidified into a core of pure steel. Oh, that's what's funny, Mom, I said, my voice suddenly even and quiet. I walked over to one of the empty benches and ran my hand over the clean surface. You think you did something noble. You think you sacrificed my happiness for Brooks. You think you sold my life's work. I turned to face them, their confused expressions a perfect picture of ignorance. And then I delivered the blow. You didn't. My father frowned. What are you talking about? We watched the man load them into his truck. You sold my decoys. I explained, the words crisp and clear. You sold the show collection. My beautiful, robust, and entirely replaceable hybrids. The real collection? The mother plants? The priceless, irreplaceable heart of Eleanor's legacy? They've been in a secure, biometric locked storage facility for the last 2 weeks. The color drained from my mother's face. My father took a half step back, his mouth slightly agape. You see, you haven't created a problem for me. You've created a catastrophic, illegal problem for yourselves. My father was the first to find his voice, though it was thin and shaky. Illegal? Eliza, don't be ridiculous. We're your parents. It was a misunderstanding. I let out a short, humorless laugh. A misunderstanding? Let me spell it out for you. You entered my property under false pretenses. You took assets that did not belong to you and sold them. That is called grand larceny, which, given the value, is a felony in this state. My mother paled, sinking onto a nearby stool. But it's a family matter, she whispered. Not anymore, I said, my voice as cold and sterile as a surgeon's scalpel. The second you took money from a third party, it stopped being a family matter. You committed wire fraud if he paid you electronically. You likely forged my signature on a bill of sale. And you misrepresented the goods. The biggest problem for you right now isn't me. It's the man who gave you $20,000. What do you think he's going to do when he realizes the collection he bought is essentially a beautiful fraud? When he tries to register them for judging and finds out their provenance is a lie? I let the words hang in the air, watching the terror dawn in their eyes. The comfortable suburban bubble they had lived in their entire lives had just popped. "We could go to jail?" my father asked, the question barely audible. "Oh, absolutely," I confirmed. "Years. There's a moment when the ground shifts, when you realize you hold all the cards. If you've ever had a moment like that, a turning point where you took your power back, I want you to simply write 'my turn' in the comments. Let's celebrate that strength together." For the first time, they weren't looking at their quirky, introverted daughter. They were looking at the woman who held their future in the palm of her hand. My mother started to cry then. Not the loud, manipulative sobs she used to get her way, but silent, terrified tears that tracked through her foundation. My father just stared at the floor, looking 10 years older than he had an hour ago. "Please, Eliza," he whispered. "What do we do?" Before I could answer, as if summoned by the sheer force of their impending doom, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was an unknown number with a South Carolina area code. A knot of certainty tightened in my gut. I walked over, picked it up, and pressed the speakerphone button. A calm, professional male voice came through. "Hello, am I speaking with Richard Miller?" "No, this is his daughter, Eliza," I said, my eyes locked on my parents' horrified faces. "May I ask who's calling?" "This is Arthur Sterling," the man said. "I recently purchased an orchid collection from your parents. I was told they were handling the sale on your behalf." I saw my mother flinch. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Is there a problem?" "A slight one, I hope," Mr. Sterling continued, his tone polite but firm. "I'm trying to update the registration for the collection with the Orchid Society, and the provenance documents they provided are unusual. The cultivar registration numbers on the bill of sale don't match the official records. I'm sure it's just a clerical error, but I can't get the collection properly insured without the correct paperwork. Can you assist?" My father looked like he was going to be sick. Their flimsy, amateur fraud was already unraveling. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "It appears there has been a significant misunderstanding. I need to speak with my parents to clarify some details. Can I call you back within the hour?" After a moment's pause, he agreed. I hung up and looked at my parents. The theoretical problem had just become very, very real, and he was waiting for an answer. "What do we tell him?" my mother wailed, grabbing my father's arm. "What are we going to do?" I held up a hand, silencing her panic. "First," I said, pulling out my phone again, "we're going to get all the interested parties on the same page." I scrolled to my sister's contact and hit dial, once again putting the call on speaker. She answered on the third ring, her voice bubbly and carefree. "Liza. Hey, I was just about to text you a picture of the centerpieces I picked out. You are going to die. They are gorgeous." I took a deep breath. "Brooke, I need you to stop talking about flowers and listen to me very carefully. Mom and Dad sold my entire show collection to pay for your wedding venue." There was a brief pause, then a light, dismissive laugh. "Oh, is that all? You sounded so serious. Look, I know you're attached to your plants, but you have tons of them. It's not a big deal." It was my mother's logic, her exact dismissive tone, parroted back perfectly. The entitlement had been passed down like a family heirloom. For anyone who has ever been the responsible one in the family, the one who always had to fix the messes you didn't create. How did you handle it? Did you step in, or did you finally let them face the consequences? Let me know your choice, stepped in or let them fall in the comments. "It is a big deal, Brooke," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Because what they did is called grand larceny. It's a felony, and since you knowingly accepted the $20,000 from that crime to pay for your party, the law has a word for you, too. Accessory. You need to come over to my house. Right now. Because the man they sold them to just called, and all of you are about to have a very, very bad day." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. 30 minutes later, my sister arrived, her face pale and blotchy from crying. Her first words were not of remorse, but of panic. "You have to fix this. Liza, you can't let them send Dad to jail. My wedding is in 3 months." I pointed to the sofa, my expression unyielding. "Sit down. All of you." They gathered like chastened schoolchildren as I stood before them. "This is not a negotiation," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. This is your one and only way out of this mess without criminal charges. I laid out the plan. Mr. Sterling is an innocent victim. We are going to make him whole. You will pay him back the $20,000 he paid you. On top of that, you will pay him an additional $5,000 for his trouble, for the fraudulent documents, and for the inconvenience. The total you need to come up with is $25,000. My mother gasped. We don't have that kind of money just lying around. Then you'll find it, I retorted. Brooke, the $20,000 you have tied up with that wedding venue? You will cancel the contract immediately. I don't care if you lose the deposit. That money is no longer yours. That's your part. Mom, Dad, the remaining $5,000, plus whatever deposit Brooke forfeits, is on you. Mom, your diamond tennis bracelet? The one you wear to your country club lunches. Dad, your vintage watch collection? I suggest you find a reputable jeweler. I want the full amount in my bank account within 72 hours. From there, I will handle the restitution to Mr. Sterling. My bracelet? My mother whispered in horror. But your father gave me that for our 20th anniversary. I looked at her, my face a mask of stone. And you gave away my legacy for a party. It seems we all have to make sacrifices. They sat there, stunned into silence by the cold, hard math of their consequences. My mother clutched her wrist, my father stared at his hands, and Brooke just looked small and defeated. As the reality of liquidating their assets began to sink in, I added one final condition. There's one more thing, I said, my voice calm. This isn't just about the money. The money fixes the legal problem. It doesn't fix the problem here, I said, gesturing to the three of them. It doesn't fix the fundamental disrespect. The belief that my life, my work, and my property are a community resource pool for you to drain whenever Brooke has a crisis. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my bag. It was a document I had drafted with a lawyer friend years ago, a sort of in case of emergency measure I had prayed I'd never need. This is a boundary agreement, I explained. It states, in very clear, legally vetted language, that you acknowledge what you did was theft. It stipulates that you will never again remove, sell, or make any decisions regarding my property without my explicit, prior written consent. It also states that you, Mom and Dad, will cease to be the primary financial support for a fully grown adult. You will all sign it, and tomorrow morning, we will go to the bank and have it notarized. My mother looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. A notarized document? Eliza, that's for strangers, for business deals. We're your family. I met her gaze without flinching. You proved today that we need this more than any business associates ever could. What do you think is the most important part of a genuine apology? Is it the words "I'm sorry," or is it the changed behavior that follows? Let me know which you value more, words or actions, in the comments. It's a question I was grappling with right in that moment. This was my price for not pressing charges. Not just the money. This. A permanent, undeniable line in the sand. That final demand, the notarized document, was what finally broke them. Not the money, not the threat of jail, but the cold, hard finality of a legal contract between a daughter and her parents. And in that brokenness, for the first time, the truth came out. It was Brooke who shattered the silence, not with entitlement, but with a raw, ugly sob. Why do you get to be so strong all the time? She cried, her words directed at me. You never needed them. You had your plants, your work, your whole separate world. I had them. They were always there to fix everything because you never had anything that needed fixing. I don't know how to be you. Her confession hung in the air, a stunning, painful revelation. She wasn't just spoiled, she was crippled by the very safety net I had never been offered. And in that moment, I saw the other side of the coin. My father looked at my mother, his eyes filled with a dawning horror. She's right, Diane, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We did this to both of them. We treated Eliza's independence like a convenience and Brooke's dependence like a virtue. We failed them both. That night, for the first time in our lives, we talked. Really talked. There were decades of resentment, of unspoken hurts and unfair expectations laid bare on my living room floor. It was ugly and agonizing. It was also the most honest conversation we have ever had. The following days were a flurry of grim transactions. A trip to a jeweler, a canceled venue contract, a wire transfer. The notarized document was signed in near silence at the bank. It wasn't a moment of triumph. It was a somber, painful acknowledgement of how broken we had become, and the first, unsteady step toward lancing a wound that had been festering for 30 years. That was 3 months ago. Mr. Sterling, a true gentleman once he understood the situation, accepted the restitution and graciously returned my show collection, which now sits back in its conservatory, a quiet reminder of the chaos. The silence between my family and me in the weeks that followed was heavy, but it was a healing silence, not an angry one. And slowly, tentatively, things began to change in small but significant ways. Brooke canceled her lavish wedding. She and Kevin are getting married next month at the local botanical gardens, a simple ceremony with 50 guests. She also picked up a weekend job waiting tables to rebuild her savings. Last week, she called me and asked me to explain the difference between a phalaenopsis and a Vanda orchid. It was the first time in our lives she'd shown any genuine interest in my world. My parents started going to family counseling, sometimes with us, sometimes by themselves. My father called me to ask for advice on how to save his wilting rose bushes, a small admission that my knowledge had value. My mother, for her part, has started asking questions and then, more importantly, waiting for the answers. The notarized document sits in my safe deposit box. I don't look at it as a weapon anymore. I see it as the foundation for a new structure, one built on the hard-won ground of mutual respect. Forgiveness is a slow-growing plant, and I'm not sure mine is in full bloom yet, but for the first time, I can see the possibility of it taking root. I learned that the Elysian collection was never the most valuable thing I owned. My self-worth was. And protecting it was the most important cultivation I would ever do. Protecting that self-worth, drawing that line in the sand, was the hardest and most necessary thing I have ever done. We are all the curators of our own lives. We each have a precious collection, whether it's of rare orchids, of career achievements, of a business built from scratch, or simply of the quiet, sacred space where we pursue our dreams. And for too long, I think many of us, especially women, have been taught that the price of admission for others into our lives is to leave the doors to our most valuable rooms unlocked. We're taught that being a peacemaker means silencing our own needs, that a good daughter or sister is one who allows her boundaries to be flexible for the comfort of others. The guilt that comes with saying no, with saying this is mine and it is not for you to take, can be immense. But what this ordeal taught me is that a boundary is not a wall designed to keep love out. It's a gate that you, and you alone, have the right to open. It is a quiet declaration that you are worthy of the same respect you so freely give to others. True family, true love, doesn't demand your key. It honors the fact that you have a lock, and it waits patiently for you to grant it entry. It's a lesson that has cost me a great deal of pain to learn, but it has given me back something priceless in return. Myself. Thank you for letting me share my story with you today. It wasn't easy, but stories like these are too important to keep in the dark. If you believe in the power of setting boundaries and cultivating a life that is truly your own, please subscribe to this channel and become part of a community that champions that strength. Your voice matters here. Until next time, tend to your gardens, whatever and wherever they may be. You are more than worth the work.